So internetmatters.org is one of the organisations that has recently been consulting with the British government and Ofcom to talk about the Online Safety Act, ways to improve it, and they've been involved in many different consultations with both Ofcom and the British government to make the Online Safety Act effectively better. Now, they've recently posted their own little article/report saying that the 5 ways the Online Safety Act is changing how children experience the online world. And overall, this is a report that goes through the benefits of the Online Safety Act, and I wanted to talk about this because I believe that some parts of this article are like genuinely fair enough. Like there's things in there that the Online Safety Act has provided protections for children, we can't deny, but it willingly kind of ignores some of the harms that come with the Online Safety Act, and also some of the harms to not just children but also us adults. I also want to talk about how, like, if this is the organisation that's advising Ofcom on what they should be doing with the Online Safety Act, then clearly something's missing because they're ignoring some glaring issues. But very quickly, there's 2 things I want to get out of the way. Firstly, this isn't me throwing shade on Internet Matters. I'm sure that, for them, they want to protect children online and that is their focus. As an organisation, that's what they want to do. So if the government come along with the Online Safety Act, of course, in their mind, well, this is a good step to reaching their goal. Their goal isn't things like, personal freedoms of the British population. That's not their goal. That's not what they're trying to achieve. So I can understand how maybe that can be pushed to the wayside in aid of reaching their goals. This isn't a hate campaign on Internet Matters. This is purely me just going through that article to explain why I think it's incorrect in a number of ways. Just my opinions as a guy on the internet, not qualified, to be clear. And the next thing I quickly want to mention is, are you looking for a VPN? You know what's coming. If you're looking for a VPN, make sure you check out private internet access at the link down below. With my link down below, you can get yourselves 4 months free and 86% off. You definitely should not be using VPNs to get around the Online Safety Act, but I have heard that some people sometimes do that. Not that I would recommend that. Yep, that should be absolutely fine. It's been 3 months since measures to make the online world safer for children came into force as part of the Online Safety Act's Protection of Children codes. In this time, there's been plenty of discussion about the impacts of the Act, with some raising concerns about privacy and others arguing it doesn't go far enough to protect users. And to be honest, both of those arguments are valid. While it is still early days, and the full picture of its impact will take time to emerge, there is already some encouraging signs that the new rules are starting to make a difference for families. Then they go on to list the various things that have got better because of the Online Safety Act. So 1, many platforms are using age verification to protect children. And then they just explain, what some of these things are, age verification platforms and stuff like that. And yes, to be fair, if your goal is to have age verification, then the Online Safety Act has done that. But we need to talk about the fact that there's been a number of serious leaks of thousands of people's information due to this. And some people have tried to dupe the system as children and therefore had their information leaked. We can look in the cases, for example, like Discord's data leak that happened earlier this year. I say earlier this year, a month ago. And this is one of the things in this list that's also very subjective. If I really want poop on my shoe, and then someone poops on my shoe, I can go, yes, I achieved the goal of getting poop on my shoe. But in the case of age verification, many people don't want that to be the goal. Yes, Online Safety Act has done that, but there's been a number of risks associated with age verification, whether it be control from social media platforms, access to the government have access to some of these social media platforms, and we still don't know how the government has been profiling people based on what sites they visit. We're still waiting for the first big scandal to come about that, and to be honest, we all have our suspicions, but it's only a matter of time until we find out. Then the second point that they go on to explain is that terms of service are getting easier to understand. Now, this is the one thing that they've brought up that I really have to disagree with. So before, with terms of service, we had the UK GDPR terms of service, which explains how our information is used. And it's also linked to things like our cookie data, what information we enter into the website, and how the information is shared and distributed. Now, with these age verification sites, say for example you go to a website and there's some content on there that could be considered adults only, and you click yes, I want to do age verification, well then that goes to third-party websites. For the most part, none of these companies do it themselves. They use third-party platforms like Verif, for example. Now you may be engaging with this website, this initial website that you wanted to use, under the premise of their privacy policy. Maybe you understand how your data is being used by this platform, but then when you're doing your age verification, you're going to a different website with their own set of privacy policies. And we've discussed this in the past about how many of these companies basically store and manage your data overseas, whether this is India, Pakistan. But the fact is that we don't know where this data is going unless we go through another set of terms and conditions and privacy policies. So terms of service is not getting easier to understand. In fact, the waters are being muddied by the complications that are associated with more platforms being involved in the process of you accessing these websites. Now, point number 3 is that algorithms are being redesigned to reduce harm. And this once again comes down to perspective, because I don't personally feel they're being redesigned to reduce harm. They're being redesigned to reduce these companies being fined for violating the Online Safety Act, which in the case of social media has led to overreaching. On a lot of social media platforms now, pages are being hidden. Information's been basically hidden from the feeds. News and world-related information is being hidden. Now, whilst I can understand the argument that little Timmy, 9 years old, shouldn't really be having the global conflicts that are taking place around the world in his newsfeed, he should be having cartoons and educational information about, engineering or art and crafts, and I understand that, but that's not what's being done here. Algorithms aren't being redesigned to introduce those methodologies. I have social media platforms that I haven't verified my age, and I see the same stuff that I've always seen. And for the most part, a lot of that is just an interesting post, and then all of a sudden you realise it's got gambling promoted on it. I think what we've learned is that the Online Safety Act does not tackle those issues, and it hasn't tackled those issues. And to be honest, you can't tackle those issues, because there's one thing about advertisements and content on the platform, but when it comes to brand deals and integrations on those platforms, you can't moderate that in the same way. So algorithms aren't really being redesigned in aid of the Online Safety Act or for the purpose of protecting children. Algorithms, for the most part, are being left to overreach in certain areas that don't protect children, and it's actually just making platforms worse to use. Now, one of the things they mention is that it's still early days, but there's indications that children are seeing a difference. And they reference a Sky News article where they talk about how children are seeing different content before and after. When you actually go into this report, they basically interviewed a number of children about before the Online Safety Act came into effect, what content they were seeing online, and then after it came into effect, what content they were seeing online. Now, the main thing that they focused on was TikTok and Instagram. Now, this study was carried out before TikTok and Instagram actually implemented the changes from the Online Safety Act into their algorithm. In fact, the study was done. A week later, the article came out. 3 weeks later, Instagram made all the changes to adhere to the Online Safety Act. And then a week later, TikTok followed. So the data's wrong. Yes, I guess maybe, children felt like they were safer because the act was put in place. But the truth is the platforms they were using hadn't made any changes yet. So the data on that is incorrect. Now, the next thing on there is platforms that are improving parental controls. Now, the parental controls have always existed on the platforms. Most social media platforms always had parental controls on different ways to manage your children accessing content and who they can communicate with. And to be honest, forget the platforms, that exists on your home internet router anyway. And of course, part of this, they talk about Roblox, where Roblox have introduced the parental controls. Now, whilst I agree that the parental controls are definitely a good thing, they're not as a result of the Online Safety Act. Parental controls came into effect before the latest part of the Online Safety Act was passed. The latest part being the one that we had at the end of July. Then the next point is one that we're not really going to go into too much, but platforms are being held accountable. Yeah, kind of. Not really, though. Ofcom are sending out fines left, right and centre. So far, no one's paid. No one's given in to them. So it's not really being held accountable. Everyone's fighting back against it. They then go on to explain what we can do now. And basically, they give some good things about setting up parental controls. And these are things that I think should happen in place of the Online Safety Act. I think, parents should be setting up parental guidance on their phone using apps like Kids Lock, or setting up parental controls on your home internet router. These are ways that you can actually more realistically prevent children from accessing VPNs, especially if you turn off the ability for them to pay for apps or pay for subscriptions. I'm fully aware that many parents watching this, you can't watch your children 24/7, especially now with phones and the digital age. I understand that, but there's things that you can do to limit and mitigate their risk. And also education. Talk to your children about what they're consuming online, and the government should really be creating programs to teach children to sit down with their parents to talk about the actual dangers that exist online and those dangers that can be presented to them and how to avoid that. The fact is, the internet's here. It's going to be here now forever. It's a thing. We have to live with it. And limiting the power that the internet should have, I don't really feel like that's the most logical best first solution to try and tackle these issues. Parental control should be step one. Now, like I said earlier in the video, I'm not going after Internet Matters here. I understand fully that their goal is protecting children, and the Online Safety Act does give them the provisions to actually make the internet safer for children. However, obviously at the detriment to the rest of the UK population. And this is where I want to talk about the core issue here. Ofcom at the moment is seeking guidance from child safety forums, like platforms and organisations that only focus on protecting children, and Ofcom is only consulting with them about the future of the Online Safety Act and essentially how to make it more strict, tougher, and how they're planning in the long run to be honest, make it more authoritarian. But there still hasn't been enough conversations around privacy, access to information, freedom of information. And I do think that Ofcom, even if it's just to save face at this point, they should be publicly, when they're announcing their schedules of works and who they're having meetings with, for example, people like Internet Matters, they should also be having these consultations with online privacy experts, because there are a number of flaws with the Online Safety Act and the way it's being rolled out. If we are going to have the Online Safety Act, the way that they've done it is the wrong way to do it. Allowing third-party private companies to access information about what websites you're visiting and then farming that out to countries overseas to manage and process that data is a big red flag. So yes, they're the security and privacy concerns that I can roll off the top of my head, but they should be meeting with actual organisations that specialise in not just, human rights, but also the ethical ways to actually manage and process data, and then have the conversation of it's even ethical to actually be doing this at all. I understand that there's many different schools of thoughts on this. It's far more complicated than me, a mere guy with opinions on the internet, to boil down and break down. But I do think that everyone's narrative is different. I'm going to be biased in this. I'm going to poo-poo everything they say about it. But Internet Matters are only going to be looking at the things that benefit children because that's their goal, and understandably so. Ofcom need to take the big step here and be the organisation that actually takes what Internet Matters says, compares that against what internet privacy professionals say, put that information together, and then actually start collecting data on what works and what doesn't. Because so far, the Online Safety Act, based on what we've actually seen from it, has just presented security risks for people. Very keen to hear what you guys think about this down below. Make sure you check out private internet access at the below links, or scan this QR code and get 4 months free and 86% off. And I shall see you all in the next one.